Institute for European and Security Policy. My name is Martin Seidek. I'm a member of the board of this esteemed institute. You would actually expect Werner Fasslam to be here, the president, or the director, Michael Zinkernel. Both are not in Vienna. Werner Fasslam, the president, is at the moment in Pakistan, very intelligent, right after the elections. And Michael Zinkernel enjoys a study tour in the United States. So I am here as member of the board to be also the moderator and to welcome you here. I welcome here all the distinguished ambassadors. I also have an ambassador here on the board from the Czech Republic. I also welcome the ambassador from Azerbaijan. So thank you very much for being here. The topic that we have tonight, do you expect me to hold a very important introductory speech on this? I think you all know exactly why we are here, why it is so important to talk about this subject. But what is important is not to only talk about this subject in one country only. It is important to understand it in the wider Central European context. Each country has to find its own solutions to have the right energy mix, and each country has its approach on this. And we are here to learn about these different approaches in times when energy is such an important tool of power politics. In 2008, the then aide of Putin, Surkov, developed the idea of the energy strategy, the energy foreign policy of Russia. But energy as a tool for having a very important weight in the world, and using energy also as a tool for exercising pressure. Nobody then, or not very many, really looked at this, although it was already clear then that the approach of Putin and Russia will be a different one, not least after his speech in the Munich Security Conference. Many countries, including my own country, we looked at this maybe in a somehow naive way, but didn't want to believe it, that this will be really a tool to exercise pressure in foreign policy. Now, with the war in Ukraine, we know exactly that energy would have been a tool to exercise this pressure, but it is still the main source of income of Russia and the main source of income to finance the war. And we in Europe, we have obviously taken our special decisions on this, our special different approaches. And I do believe it is important again to speak about this and to learn and understand how the approaches of our Central European neighbors or distant neighbors like Poland. I also welcome now the ambassador from Turkey to the international organization, Levent Ehler, a personal friend of mine. Very pleased to have you here. I am really pleased that we have such a prominent opening speaker for opening remarks, Karlheinz Kopf, who has been in Austrian politics for so many years, and knows Austrian politics, and especially also all economic-related politics, business-related politics very well. Karlheinz comes from Vorarlberg, the business people in Austria. So he is the man to speak about this. Now he comes here in his role as the Secretary General of the Austrian Chamber of Economic Chamber, formerly the Austrian Chamber of Commerce. We have then a very important and august panel. We have Walter Boltz, the former head of E-Control. Then we have Tomáš Ehler, who is the Senior Director and Deputy Minister in the Ministry of Industry and Trade of the Czech Republic and the Director of Energy and Nuclear Resources Section. I'm pleased to also then welcome Aleksander Geržina, the Ambassador of Slovenia. Next to him is Jakub Gibek from Poland, the Director of the Department of International Affairs of the Ministry of Climate and Environment of Poland. And finally, last but not least, Martin Schebesta from Germany, from the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, and the policy advisor for energy and resources of the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung. I will introduce each of the panelists then separately after we have listened to the opening remarks of Karlheinz Kopf. And Karlheinz, you were kind enough to come from the parliament directly here. I know that eventually you will have to go back, so especially for this, thank you very much. And now the rostrum, not the floor, the rostrum is yours. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Martin. Excellencies, representatives of ministries and embassies, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here with such an distinguished auditorium here in this house. So thanks for the invitation. Well, as you mentioned, Martin, I'm a member of parliament in Austria now since nearly 30 years, and since 6 years Secretary General of the Chamber, of the Federal Economic Chamber. And I remember Walter Boltz, seeing Walter Boltz sitting here. I had been spokesperson of my party for energy activities, and since during 10 years, I think, and had to do some very important decisions at that time, at the end of the 90s, when the European energy market had been set up, and also in Austria we had to set up this rules in our law at that time, and you had been one of the partners for politics, to expert to support politics in that decision. So it's an interesting meeting again, you here at this place. Well, thanks for the first to the organizers to organize this event on this very important topic. And as we all know, and I also learned that in former times, we all know that energy, and especially the underlying infrastructure we need for energy support, is typically provided by long-term projects and initiatives. That has not changed. It got even more problematic than in the past. And as we know, large infrastructure projects often take decades to be realized. And regardless, the start of the war in Ukraine, you mentioned it, required a swift, decisive and coordinated reaction by the EU and the Western world. And therefore, one of the questions is also production and infrastructure for energy support. And while action was taken in an unprecedented unit, challenges in the energy sector still remain, even because even when we have taken some decisions in another direction. Only to remember, a total of 56% of the EU's energy demand is imported. The number for Austria is even higher, stands at 75%, and 2/3 of them are still fossil fuels. So in a yearly average, Austria generates about 13% of its electricity from natural gas, and this figure rises to an impressive 40% during the winter months. So only to give us a feeling about the Austrian situation. And even though Austria was able to significantly bring down its dependence on Russian natural gas from 90% in 22, roughly to 2/3 of it in 23, it stays on a high level. And the fact remains that Austria, and not only Austria, Central and Eastern Europe are highly dependent on Russia for its energy needs, and that describes the problem we are all facing. So the past 2 years have painfully shown our economic dependence on the once cheap energy and especially depending on Russian gas. Especially the Austrian economy had for many years and mostly decades, we had a positive impact from that situation on our economy. But now it turned. And at the moment we are facing a suffering of the Austrian industry. It decreased by -9% in sold production in the third quarter of the last year in relation to 22. And especially energy-intensive industries, as paper production with -35%, chemicals with -16%, and non-ferrous metals with -17%, have been most affected from this situation, and that are impressive in the negative figures. And the situation is not likely to get better anytime soon, as incoming orders are still reflecting the trend. So that's a result of a loss of competitiveness of the Austrian industry, especially, as I said, the energy-intensive industries, because of this energy price development. But on the other hand, also coming from the inflation situation, by an increase of salaries during the last 2-3 years, that also have hit the situation of our competitiveness. So one key reason are as I said, the high gas prices, but also this increase of salaries. But to increase our energy independence, and that's the main goal we are facing, to increase that energy independence midterm, Austria is actively working on the expansion of pipeline infrastructure, for example. But as we also see that such a small project like Wagloop in Upper Austria, to facilitate a reverse flow from west to east, brings a lot of not so technical discussions, but also political discussions. And I hope we'll be able within the next weeks to solve that and to come a step forward. But still, to become independent from Russian gas, we need to work together, especially in this region, to develop capable multinational energy infrastructure. And this is the only way, I think, to diversify our energy mix in terms of source and origin. And however, lengthy permitting procedures, as we have seen on such infrastructure projects, lasting 7 or up to 10 years, most of them, hamper the deployment of new infrastructure and renewable energy sources. And therefore it's positive that the European Commission has provided a first set of tools named Repower EU, for example. These tools need to be further extended and effectively implemented on the national level. Also a challenge we are facing. But we must also focus on diversifying imports to all countries that are potential reliable partners. And that's the main goal. We had for a too long period been focused on one, and as we at the moment see not as reliable partner as we thought in the past, and that's now it's necessary to change, and therefore I think it's necessary to do that together, especially as I said in this region, and also EU platforms like Aggregate EU. Combine the purchasing powers of the EU countries and therefore increase bargaining power. We should aim for long-term commitments. I think we need diversifying on the other hand, and necessary also to look for long-term commitments, to buy from existing, but also looking for new reliable third countries in the future. And the past 2 years have clearly shown that we cannot predict the future challenges. So we shall need to keep an open mind and remain highly adaptable to explore all technologies and innovation options. I think also that is one of the main goals, to explore all technology that can be able to support our independency, and therefore it's necessary to need all the innovation options we have in this sector. It's not the right way to fix too early on only one or two energy kinds. So therefore, it's necessary to explore all the technologies. Europe must be the cradle of modern science and research. Our funding here in R&D is enormous, but it will be necessary to even strengthen our efforts there and to be more effective as we had been in the past by focusing more than we did. So let us pool all our resources into providing the energy solutions for the future. We have experienced that energy was used as a weapon against Europe. You already mentioned, Martin. So it's one of our main goals Europe needs to secure a diverse, a reliable and affordable and a resilient supply of energy, including the underlying infrastructure. And this is the only way to truly defend our values. And that's one of our main challenges, to defend our values together against the aggression from outside long term, and to take persons like the Russian leader this instrument way to, or not give us into other hands and dependence to use energy as a weapon. The Vienna School of International Studies has been educating global leaders for the past 270 years. Congratulations. And therefore also thanks to this organization for organizing this event. And these days our world is getting more and more volatile, rising ever new challenges that need to be addressed. And new challenges require new thinking, and new thinking requires lifelong learning. And that's a place here for that. And in this respect, I very much look forward to learning about the perspectives of our esteemed keynote speakers and participants of this discussion. Thanks for participating. And the interest in today's event and the participants show, when I look into this room, this full room, it shows that the security of energy supply in Europe is a moving topic. Thanks for being here. We need to join forces across Europe to tackle the challenge of how to supply our continent with energy in the future without being dependent on third powers. So thanks for being here, and we are all awaiting your remarks within this discussion. Thanks, and have an interesting evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General, dear Karlheinz, that you found the time also for your... do you hear me? Does it work? Yeah, okay. For these very interesting remarks, and being also so open about the problems that we in Austria face at the moment, and the discussions that we are in at the moment. And there are very, very hot debates in our country, and the more so it is important to have the expert on our panel on Austrian energy policy, the former head of the Energy Control Austrian Regulatory Board, Mr. Walter Boltz. I will introduce him right away. But before that, I should have said in my introductory remarks, should have expressed my gratitude to the Czech Embassy, and especially to Mr. Otepka for all his efforts in organizing this event together with us. Excuse me that I have forgotten about this in my introductory remarks, but I do it now. And I really mean it, and thank you very much. You have done a great job, and I think also afterwards, when we then have, after the discussion here, there will be some wine and some finger food served, and I think we also owe that to the Czech Embassy. So thank you very much. And also to the Slovenian Embassy, so please.
A little bit. A little bit, that's okay.
So, will there be some Slovenian wines?
No, but we participated, I guess, in next time.
Okay, next time.
But next discussion about the nuclear energy.
Because Slovenian wines are just fantastic. So okay, so let's now move to introduce our panelists. Walter Boltz. He is from Vienna. He studied at the Vienna University of Technology, then worked, if I'm not mistaken, for an Austrian commercial bank, and also was on the board of a German consultancy. But he had a degree of technical physics at the University of Technology, and then was from 1999 to 2001 member of the executive board of PricewaterhouseCoopers, and since from March 2001 to 2016, he was the head of the Austrian Regulatory Authority e-control for over 15 years. And now I think you work as a senior energy advisor at Baker McKenzie, and you advise international energy clients on regulatory and energy strategy, and you work in Germany, Ukraine, Moldova, and also in Brussels. So please, Mr. Boltz, would ask you for your introductory remarks.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here again. Pretty big audience this time, so I will try to be relatively brief in the introduction. I think we'll have some time to have a more in-depth discussion. Basically, when we look at today's energy security situation in Europe, we managed a difficult 2 years, but we are, I would say, mostly out of the water or out of the woods. We had great difficulties in 2021 and 2. In 21, we actually didn't know what the problem was. And the problem was, of course, Russia manipulating the gas market, but it wasn't so obvious. And they were kind of, smart enough to fool us. And then in 22, we realized, what actually the background was and why, Gazprom was lying to Europe and why, they were giving false information, depleting the storages and so on. So now today we have a pretty resilient energy market. We have rather full gas storages. We have prices coming back to pre-crisis levels for gas and also for electricity. The gas demand has dropped about 10–15% depending on countries. We do have some problems with industry or energy-intensive industry that was squeezed out of Europe, and we probably have accelerated the transformation of industry because it was always clear that Europe is not the place where there's cheap energy. But of course, once you had the activity here, you kind of kept it here as long as it was commercially viable. And then in 22, it was no longer commercially viable. So many industrial companies shifted energy-intensive production somewhere else, and that's either the US or maybe Asia or Arab countries where energy is really, really cheap. So this has been kind of a sad effect of what we had experienced in the last year. In summary, I think the gas war that Russia started against Europe, we almost won it. We paid a steep price for it, but at the end of the day, this did not result in Europe stopping supporting Ukraine. It did not push countries into complete disarray or economies down a massive problems. So in a way, we were able to manage the very difficult situation. We did have to spend a lot of money. Governments spent about 540 billion in subsidies to various energy users in Europe. And probably if you take the high prices that many people paid in Europe as a whole, we probably spent $1.5 trillion, something plus minus, on energy that we would not have had to spend without this war. So basically, Russia cost us about $1.5 trillion. Obviously, there will be studies and kind of figuring out exactly how much it was as far as you can do, but it was a very steep price we paid. But we more or less won the energy war. So nobody was without energy, nobody had to freeze. We managed this very difficult situation. But of course, we did have and still have some long-term effects. We have this change in industrial strategy and industrial activities. We have, on the other hand, seen a massive acceleration of decarbonization policies. The Green Deal would have been impossible without this gas war that Russia started. We have accelerated the energy transition on the European level, and of course, still a lot of the new EU legislative pieces still need to be implemented in Europe, so that will take another couple of years. We also are seeing now that some of the decarbonization policies that were drafted and implemented last year were maybe a little bit too ambitious. So it's not likely we will meet the 2050 zero carbon goals, But honestly, this is more a symbolic thing because, if it's 2050 or 2045 or 2055, it doesn't really matter. We are going in the right direction. We are seeing that the market have been much more successful to adjust than we thought possible. There have been some interventions in the market, but even the new electricity market design package, which still has to be nationally implemented, is not a radical change. It has some more focus on long-term products and long-term projects and contracts, but it's not a fundamental reshuffling of the market. It's just an adjustment that probably would have had to be done anyway, but maybe a little bit more over a longer period of time. We still have a lot of unresolved issues where we are having only a broad idea what to do, so we are still thinking about how fast we can ramp up green hydrogen, how we manage carbon dioxide transportation and storage, which we'll definitely need in the interim. We have still the difficulty that national markets are supporting renewables in different ways, and on the other hand, we still want to have a common EU market. So we need to resolve those issues. And then we have some technological issues like how do we deal with white hydrogen, how do we deal with electricity storage needs, what's the best tool to do that? Is it hydrogen? Is it batteries, maybe new battery technologies? Is it storing heat or something like that? We still have some open question regarding mobility, although it's pretty clear we will have electric mobility for small passenger vehicles. It still is not totally clear if long-distance hauling will be really also electric, or will it be using hydrogen or other synthetic fuels. We still need to sort out the issue of the European hydrogen and the European CO2 network. So there are some issues that need to be addressed. What we did have is we have seen that the general public has become a little bit tired of the speed of decarbonization on the EU level. I expect a strong shift, like probably everybody here in the room, to more right-wing parties in the parliament, so there will be less enthusiasm about new decarbonization policies. I do not believe there will be any rollback, because I don't think there will be a majority for rollback either. So we will probably have another 5 years of relative national implementation of all the measures we already have, and maybe a few small adjustments here or there. So in summary, we are, on the European level, we are doing rather well. The Russian market share has gone from 40 to about 7-8% on the gas market. So honestly, on the EU scale, if Russian gas stops, it stops. Nobody cares. It's different in a couple of countries, Austria being one of them, and also Slovakia, Slovenia, where the market share is still much too high. But even there, given that we have a very well-supplied European gas market, storages are comfortably full. If today the gas supply to Ukraine would stop, which is a distinct possibility, this is a pipeline going through a war zone where every other day a couple dozen or 100 drones and rockets fall down, and it's just a question of time until one of them falls on a compressor station. But even if that happens, some countries will have a problem. Austria, maybe some of the countries here, but overall Europe will just shrug it off. So, well, okay, we have higher prices for 2 months and then everything goes back to normal. So we are beyond the point where this was a real threat, like in early 2022. We have a very well-supplied global LNG market. There will be actually more gas coming onto the global market soon. So I predict very low gas prices in the next 2 years, as there will be oversupply of gas, because globally the high prices in last year have also reduced global gas demand. China has gone a little bit more to coal, and then of course the renewable build-up was much faster than anybody thought possible. Yes, this creates problem in Europe. The grid is not able to absorb as much renewables as there is, or as it should be, but eventually this will catch up. So we have a quite comfortable situation. I think for all the countries that are here on the panel, it's not a question, would they manage without Russian gas? They all would manage. Some a little bit better, some a little bit worse, but it would not be a big problem. And then maybe as a final point, some lessons learned, I think, that are important to keep in mind going forward. I think, first of all, energy policy or energy is always political. It has been political and it will stay political. And my friend Danny Jürgen already wrote a book about that maybe 25 years ago, that oil policy is just, it's a global issue, and oil is not a commodity itself. It's a political aspect. We were in Europe not believing it, or we didn't want to believe it. I mean, I remember Angela Merkel insisting that, Nord Stream is just a commercial project. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's not true. It was never true, and it will never be true in the future. So this is political. Energy markets in Europe worked much better than people thought. People were thinking, this will be the end of the energy market. That's not true. Prices came up, high prices reduced consumption, and that saved the market. Yes, it was painful. Yes, it has side effects like inflation and all this, but basically markets did work. I think we should never be as naive as we were. We were thinking, if one country is delivering reliably for a couple of years, it will stay and keep doing that. I think we have to be aware that whenever we allow a country or a big company to come into the position of having market dominance, that's bad. And eventually, they will use the position to our disadvantage. And that goes for big industrial companies, it goes for countries. So we should keep that in mind. The best tool to avoid it is diversification. If nobody had a market share more than, let's say, 15% of the European gas market, nobody would have had any problem replacing those 15%. But Russia had 45%, and that was very painful and difficult to replace those 45%. Now we managed. Now they are down to a level which is really not threatening us anymore. But of course, there are other commodities where we still have the situation that we are highly dependent on other countries, and it doesn't matter if it's China or Russia or somewhere. So we need to be careful that we are reducing the dependency in critical areas. And maybe another point, we did see during the crisis that countries with a large share of renewables, they actually had lower electricity prices. So the future with a high share of renewables actually means a lower electricity price, and then eventually also energy prices, because it is diversified. The cost of renewable electricity production is now the lowest we can achieve. So coal is more expensive, gas is more expensive. Yes, there are problems in the grid. Yes, we need to resolve some of those issues. But at the end of the day, renewable generation is already and will in the future be the cheapest way of generating electricity. And the more we have and the more we connect big industrial production sites of renewables across the EU, the more resilient our electricity system will be. And of course, we will also need to import some of that. So this idea of national or European independence of any import is not going to work, because the best way of building a resilient electricity and energy system is international cooperation, but diversified, not relying on one partner or two partners, but on many, and a very powerful grid that allows the connection of many parties, and then making sure that the market works. So in summary, I think we managed this situation in 2022 and 3 better than people expected. We paid a high price in Europe. If we had been smarter, we would have avoided this market dominance. And I hope that we learned our lessons here, and we will make sure that we are never caught again in such a disadvantageous situation as we were in 22. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boltz, that for your really, for the remarks that I would say make us a little bit more relaxed, because what you said is, yes, Europe managed. Europe was able to manage the, the threat, the impact that Russia tried to win the gas war against Europe. it did not. I think this is important. The next message that you gave is the European markets worked and are still working. Yes, it was costly, but we have managed, and this is important. And the other message is you said that you hope that we have all drawn our respective lessons and that we stop to be naive. It's not always appropriate to quote oneself, but in this respect, as you said, that we have stopped, or hopefully we stop to be naive. I just gave an interview in Die Presse on last Saturday, on the 24th of February, and the headline was, I hope that this will be the end to naivete, to naivete. So this is just, it simply coincides with what Mr. Boltz was just saying. Now, let's move to my neighbor to my right, to the Deputy Minister Tomáš Ehler from Czechia. We now can say Czechia, not anymore Czech Republic. Czechia is Czechian. And Mr. Ehler speaks very, very good German. Mr. Ehler comes from, if I'm not mistaken, from Prague. You studied economics in Prague, worked then for the foreign ministry, and you worked in Berlin. You even were an exchange diplomat at the Austrian foreign ministry in the department that I was once heading. But then so you changed your line, and now you are, if I may say so, one of the big bosses of nuclear energy in Czechia. You are in charge of nuclear energy in your ministry, and I hope I quoted correctly. You are a member of the supervisory board of the power stations of Dukovany and Elektrárna Temelin 2. And I hope I said it correctly. So you are a real expert to speak about also nuclear energy. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, dear ambassadors, dear guests. Many thanks for the invitation. My German is definitely better than English, so I hope I will be good understood. And thank you for the introduction. I can also say that I'm glad to be here again. I used to play the volleyball here in the gym during my stay in the in Vienna, in Diplomatic Academy. So glad to be here. And I will in some points overlap and be in alignment with Mr. Boltz, and perhaps I will add more the power generation perspective so that we are more plastic and then we can have broader discussions. I will start also with lessons learned, observations, but I think it should be fair that the Russian aggression in Ukraine and the energy war as described is not the singular cause of challenges what we face. It also highlighted the structural problems that we in the EU, in the energy field and energy policy have. So, first observation that the situation is stabilized short term, but the crisis has shown that energy policy goals, so-called energy trilemma, were not and still are not in proper balance. Let's go through security, energy security. I think it's clear the crisis has shown that security, stability and independence are critical to our economies and must not be neglected. Short term, the markets did work, but we have question marks and we see challenges in long term, especially in power generation, how to ensure power generation adequacy and to reduce import dependence. There is a number of issues related to security, infrastructure constraints across the EU, but also, if I can call it, free ride effect. Competitiveness very nice described on the basic industry. I think it's a very big challenge with negative impacts. Our gas prices are 3-4 times higher than in the US. Our electricity prices 2 or 3 times higher than South Korea, China, US, Russia. And we have to be honest with us, it is to large extent impact of our energy and to some extent climate policies. So we need really to focus on this aspect and take it into account. Perhaps what makes me a bit concerned that together with these policies, also the protectionism is a bit rising in the EU. So this will not lead to lower prices and to competition. Sustainability, the third triangle or the third point within these strategic goals. I think we have very good results, but we have to admit, perhaps to say it less diplomatically, it is two expenses of competition and security in some aspects. So we have really to have more balanced approach. Our CO2 emissions share 8% globally, so really we have to be careful, and we need in all our measures to admit there is not only complementary effect, there is sometimes neutral effect, but there are a number of let's call it antagonistic effect, which if we aim at one goal, we harm in another two or one. Last point from this first part, the lessons learned, the role of states has risen, the role of markets, despite they did work, is and will be weaker. So it's a challenge for us to ensure that there is still needed level of competition. On the other hand, if we want to ensure energy security, the role of governments, as it has been shown, especially in strategical areas, it's needed. So what has been done and what needs to be done, Czech perspective. Perhaps short view to history. As a landlocked country, the energy security was always a part of our economic policy, has always a high priority. We did some homeworks in 90s. We built additional gas infrastructure to have alternative to the East, Soviet and Russian gas deliveries from north, from Germany. We did build the alternative route for oil, the Trans-Alpine pipeline, and we ensured also alternative contracts for gas, at least temporarily, the Norwegian one. What we did during the crisis and what helped to overcome at least the pressure was the LNG capacity reservations in Germany and in Netherlands. What was also done as a strategic step, the state stepped in transmission pipelines operator, took over, and also stepped into strategic reserves of gas. In the oil sector, our refinery industry is to 50% dependent on Russian oil. The first thing, we successfully defended the project extending the capacity of Trans-Alpine oil pipeline. This is now being realized, and now it's being realized the substitution of or technological change for substitution of Russian oil in Czech refineries. So shortly, as for oil, in coming 1-2 years, we could be independent as for refinery industry. As for gas, at one moment from 98% of Russian gas, we were able, thanks to internal market and measures to substitute. Electricity. What perhaps some trends and then go to more concrete. we see a challenge that a part of different targets, the generation adequacy is not fully acknowledged as a basic principle, and there will be number of problems, could be challenges in coming 5-10 years connected with lignite coal phase out. Today we see 9 member states which are net exporters, the rest net importers. The biggest change, Germany, we already read 2009 from the Monopol Commission, the advisory board, that Germany will not anymore be a stability anchor of power generation. I think last year was the first year when Germany had a negative trading balance, 12 terawatt hours. The prospects for this year over 20, perhaps 30. So this is a challenge, the number of countries, and I think this has to be taken account. Second point, trends. How do we decarbonize the electricity sector? And very nice, described by Mr. Boltz, ambitions and reality and realistic schedules. So I think the biggest challenge in our region now is how to phase out lignite in coming 5, 10, 15 years. The political targets, but the reality on the market, the price of CO2 allowances, and what should be the best way. Should be temporarily the gas power plants, or should be waiting for new nuclear build-up, which of course is a long investment period before the sources are. And the prices, as I described, it's not only about impact of Russian aggression and manipulation with gas, it's also a structural problem. So we definitely need to think about CO2 market, which has now trend connected with economic recession or problems of many countries. So the prices are going lower, but we should look structurally whether it's sustainable to have 3-4 times higher CO2 prices than out of the Europe. We should also think on and look on different sources, not low carbon sources, not only renewable, but also nuclear and others. And I will now go a bit more into details, because if you look on the merit order curve, not only renewables, but also stable low carbon sources help you to lower the prices, to lower the gas consumption, and to ease the pressure on energy prices. So for our region, it's clear, coal and lignite, it's not a long-term option due to the decarbonization targets, but the question is how to maintain them enough to ensure the energy security and stability. Renewables, it's one of clear priority. We have now 12% share of power generation. The aim is to get around 30%, 2030, and rise the share. But we have to respect the technical reality. In our region, for photovoltaic, it's around 1,000 hours of full output. For wind, it's about 22%, and it's very big challenge. It's not only about permitting processes, but it's also about public acceptance, which, to be honest, for wind energy is very limited due to specific profile and approach of our inhabitants. So, solution for our region, and now the Czech state energy policy is being updated. It's a mixture. It's a mixture of renewables. The major pillar should be the nuclear energy, and let me mention some details or some points. Perhaps then we can go into discussion. It's a stable, low carbon energy source. It allows us to have independence We have introduced a special rule to have at least 3 years reserves for fresh fuel. It has clear economic benefits for the market. We have done some studies now that the general LCOE, this is first level, levelized cost of electricity, are lower with higher share of nuclear. On the second hand, it's very important for the final electricity price, and therefore, in this aspect, I will be a bit in contradiction with Mr. Boltz. Renewable energy sources in our region, the wind and photovoltaic, if they are not in balance, so I think, and this is the same for nuclear, the energy mix has to be balanced, has to be broader. But if it's dominantly based on renewable energy sources, then the system cost, the final, which then reflects in final electricity costs, it's higher. And it's not only economic theory, it's based on real dates. I can also use, having lived 10 years in Germany, so there is a clear correlation, and if the federal government wouldn't take over this cost, then the final electricity cost in Germany for industry, and especially households, would be much higher. We are now planning to, of course, the cheapest way for nuclear is the long-term operation of current installations. We have 6 units in operation. The goal is to have them in operation 60 years, approximately. Let's see further. Then our government decided to go up to 4 large units and Dukovany and Temelín sites, and we also prepare for new technologies, small and modular reactors, and the priority, or let's say the aim, is not only power generation, but also use them for heat generation, where we have experience from Temelín to České Budějovice, Budweis, and now planning the project from Dukovany to Brno. So what, perhaps to wrap up, not to speak too long, conclusions and perhaps points for discussion, to sum up. First thing, the really true balance of energy policy targets is needed on the national, but especially EU level, and the neutrality, technology neutrality, is a way how to exploit the cost-effective approach. That means respect the geographical potential of each country. Difference will be Spain, Poland, Czechia. So really the potential and the economics of low-carbon industry differs region, country to country. Second point, nuclear energy is part of solution. So it may not be discriminated within the EU policies. There will be now discussion about 2040 targets. I think we should not repeat to stick to specific targets for each technology. I think we should a bit return to good practice and theory. One target, one instrument, the Tinberger rule from economics. So we should have decarbonization targets, but leave the countries to have the free right to choice and to aim their state aids if necessary for these sources. System approach needed. We should differentiate between long, short-term liquidity markets, but also, not least, to focus on ensuring long-term energy security and stability of supply. And for our region, the nuclear should play a role on that. Last point, the nuclear energy has support of over 70% in population in Czechia, let's say the development of nuclear energy. But we are aware that in some other countries, such as Austria, the public support is not so high or is different. So we are aware of that. We are transparent. We have a bilateral agreements to inform our counterparts to be open, and I think this is the proper way, and we definitely want to continue in this constructive and transparent approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ehler. Very interesting presentation, very interesting remarks. What I think is important to mention in summing up is the difference in the geographic potential of each country. This is for sure. One has to take that into account. A country like Austria, with its relief, and as an alpine country, can produce also, like Slovenia, more hydropower than other countries, and this is for sure. So I mean, this is, and we have to keep that in mind. It's interesting to understand that as to the increase of the share of renewables in Czechia, that wind energy is not popular among the population. That is an interesting remark. We have that, as you already rightly mentioned, with the same situation, only with reference to nuclear energy, but we will come to this later. Interesting is also that you said that you could scale down the dependence on Russian oil, and you could do that very fast, also by having a new pipeline, building a new pipeline. But you have another big challenge, which is to phase out the dependence on lignite and coal. That I think is also an issue that we will then hear from our friend and colleague from Poland. Another interesting remark was also in reference to what Mr. Boltz said, that there is now more weight on the role of governments in the energy system in Europe as a whole, and less of the market. About nuclear energy and the build-up of nuclear energy in your remarks, I guess we will then later return in our discussion. And finally, one interesting remark, and that brings us then to our next speaker, to Martin Schebesta from the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung. I don't know whether he liked to hear your remark when you said that Germany is no more the energy anchor of Europe.
Stabilitätsanker.
Stabilitätsanker. So we'll the anchor of stability, and I guess we will hear about this from Martin Schebesta. He has a very interesting background. He studied most, if I'm well informed, in the UK, in Durham University, and then in the London School of Economics. Then was with the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung. Was first, if I present it correctly, in charge of the coordinator of economic policies and the soziale Marktwirtschaft, whatever that is, social market economy. Social market economy, and then since July of last year, you are the coordinator for energy and resources in the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung. So we're very pleased to have you here, and please tell us more about how Germany lost its role as an anchor of stability. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much from my side as well. Excellencies, representatives, ladies and gentlemen. Also, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really happy to speak here on behalf of Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung. Yes, this is a very timely topic we're talking about, and let me start first with the situation in Germany, to start with the facts. So in the last 2 years, Germany actually managed to become less dependent, if not even independent, of Russian energy. There was a really big dependence, as you mentioned before, on Russian gas in Germany in particular. Russian gas accounted for 55% of all the gas consumed in Germany. So you can see there was a high concentration. However, that share has dropped to zero, and Germany has managed to substitute its gas deliveries. The same applies also to Russian oil, because before the war, Russian oil covered about a third of German oil demand before the war. and Germany managed to substitute Russian oil as well. But however, we have to keep in mind the economic situation in this picture. Germany, the economy has actually struggled and is still struggling. We are actually in a recession right now, and this has also helped in managing this crisis, that there's reduced demand for gas and oil as well. You could say that Russia's war against Ukraine acted as a catalyst for the need for decarbonization and defossilization as well. The government has proclaimed that renewable energy sources are meant to become the key pillar of the energy security, of the energy supply in Germany. However, obviously that's related to some challenges and risks. Let me just name a few. So first of all, even though we managed to substitute Russian gas, we are not completely independent of fossil fuels, of course. Especially gas remains a crucial energy source and is hard to substitute, at least in the short term. In the medium to long term, obviously renewable hydrogen is meant to substitute gas. However, there is still no real market for hydrogen, and it remains unclear whether we manage to substitute all the need for gas with renewable hydrogen in particular. Also, as you mentioned before, the triangle of energy policy. So you have energy security as one aspect, but you also have clean energy or cleanliness of energy as a second part, and the third part being it being affordable. That's particularly important for German industry, and obviously competitiveness is and remains an issue with regard to resulting higher energy prices. They're coming down, however, they're still higher than before the war. Also relying obviously on weather-dependent renewables in a power system with simultaneous loss of secured power increases the risk of grid instabilities and congestion on the other end of the spectrum. There is a sluggish expansion of electricity and gas grids needed for this sort of transition, and construction of storage facilities will need to speed up. Also, Germany faces, I'm sure you're aware, a shortage of skilled workers. So in the medium to long term, this will also become an issue when it comes to this energy transition. And another point to remember, as I'm also responsible for resources, secure and sustainable supply of raw materials is also critical because you need raw materials for this energy transition, and very many of them are actually critical. If you look at the situation in Europe, I can agree with my the previous speakers. The energy market in Europe worked well and contained the gas shortages pretty well in Europe as a whole. And this is due to Repower EU on one aspect, but of course also to member states and their policies. Let me also say that reduced demand due to the economic situation, at least in Germany, helped in that case as well. And Germany is still, I wouldn't say maybe not the front runner in energy to that extent, as you mentioned earlier, but it still remains a important transit hub, also still with natural gas. So looking forward, I think expanding renewable energy sources will be a key to energy security, but also we should not be naive. We need to look at all energy options, put them on the table, and consider the effects in an open-minded way. To what extent nuclear energy should be part of the sustainable energy mix is open to debate, and this debate should be had. However, I would also bring in that we should eventually consider also dependencies that exist on the nuclear side. But we can discuss that later on. Let me highlight that I believe that Central European countries should work together and coordinate their policies. As I mentioned before, I think this crisis has shown that we can work together and that cooperation is actually a key to energy security in Central Europe. Even if there's increasing electrification happening, there will obviously be need to build a common grid and integrate electricity markets So I think we managed the situation well, and we still need to keep working on a common energy policy for energy security. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schebesta. You had a very concise statement, really interesting. Thank you. Yes, Russia's war was a catalyst for decarbonization. It's interesting your remark that at the moment we don't have, which is known, but still it's important to say it, no real market for hydrogen. And an important point that also I think pertains to Austria and probably also to other Central European countries is you spoke about the shortage of workers, of labor and qualified labor for the energy transition. I think this is an aspect that we should keep in mind, and that is definitely important, and you were right from my point of view to point that out. You also agreed with the other speakers that the energy market in Europe worked well, but this was also due to reduced demand. And Germany is still an important and will stay an important transit hub, and we Austrians and also from our Czech friends know that very, very well. And that it is not, so to say, really clear what is then a future sustainable energy mix. That you also pointed to the question of possible dependencies, foreign outside dependencies in the market, in the field of nuclear energy is an interesting point, and I would like to go into this then in the discussion that we have later on. Let me now move to our next speaker, Mr. Jakub Gibek from Poland. He is the director of the Department of International Affairs of the Ministry of Climate and Environment of the Republic of Poland, with more than 20 years of experience in public administration in the field of environmental protection. And he has been working also in the management experience in the areas of international cooperation, climate protection, and water management. And what is important too is that he was the chairman of the Polish delegation of the climate negotiations at COP 25 and 26. I see the ambassador from Azerbaijan here. You have a really huge task in hosting the next COP. So congratulations for your courage on this, Mr. Ambassador, allow me to say, and make this side remark. But please, Mr. Gibek. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. And let me start with the point you made before, that the countries here at the table have different geographical situations. And that's what we as Poland say as our main line to take, that we have a very different starting point from everybody else in Europe. But to a certain extent, we were also able to, without satisfaction, to forecast what we saw in the last few years, and we started the change in paradigm of energy security a bit earlier than our friends here from other member states. What I mean, what is energy security? Well, energy security is the ability to have to satisfy the demand for energy of a certain type of energy, quantity, quality, in a specific time and in specific place. And in order to do so, we need to base this energy security on three issues. The first is the sovereignty of energy production. The second is the diversification of those supplies that we cannot be sovereign in, and the third is solidarity. And as you definitely know, Poland started from a very difficult point in terms of energy transition. We had a huge share of energy coming from fossil fuels, mainly from coal. This is falling, but still we are not yet out of the woods. Nevertheless, we want to go in the direction of clean energy. We hope to have by 2040 130 gigawatts of capacity. Of those, 74% have to come from clean energy sources, mainly from renewables. We want to have 87 gigawatts of renewables by 2040. The majority of it will come from photovoltaics, 45 gigawatts. We intend to have also 18 gigawatts of offshore wind and 20 gigawatts of onshore. Poland does not have potential for huge hydropower projects, therefore this is only marginal. We are also different from our friends here sitting at in this panel, also in terms of not having any history in nuclear power. Still, we need some source of reliable and stable supply, and nuclear is the only existing technology with big potential to do so. So we want to build our first nuclear power plant by 2033. And we intend to have 9 gigawatts of capacity by mid-2040s. What else is needed, of course, is huge grid investments, big investments in energy storage, and in these terms we want to build both energy storage, battery energy storage and the pump storage. But and of course the hydrogen will play also a key role, but there are so many things that can go wrong that it's difficult to forecast whether Poland and wider Europe can be energy secure in terms of ability to provide energy to everybody in any time, because as my colleagues here mentioned already, the whole Europe faces problem of human resources needed to make the transition. We also lack financial resources, or they're not implemented in the right places. We lack raw materials. We need to import them, but Europe became also dependent on import of solar panels and electric cars, because our industries are not there yet, and some third parties have taken our technologies, improved them, and then now they are selling to us. Nevertheless, we are going forward very, very fast with the climate transition ambitions, which for the moment is very beneficial rather for third countries than for European industry. We definitely need to change it. Of course, there is a social dimension we need to take care of, the issue of energy poverty, and the issue of, in case of Poland at least, of those industries that will become less and less needed in terms of clean energy. We managed already to come down with the number of jobs in coal mining sector from 400,000 to 80,000. Nevertheless, from 400,000 to 80,000. Nevertheless, there are still many jobs that we need to provide to those people that are working in those industries for the moment. There will be a growing competition between all the countries in terms of access to new, not only to raw materials, but also to new devices needed for energy transition, like heat pumps or electrolyzers. there is already a shortage on the market in terms of both of those kinds of devices. We need to safeguard more local content in terms of what we do with our energy sectors. Currently, there is a big gap in this. Europe is the leader mainly only in wind technologies. All other energy technologies are more or less very profound in other parts of the world. And what is the most difficult? We need to do all this at once in a very short time, which means that we are on the limit all the time, and that will not change. So there are two things that we need definitely to keep our eye on. One is the energy efficiency, because this is the huge potential where we can save the money and save the both in terms of capex and in terms of operational costs. And what is really very loudly heard here, we need to keep all the options open. We need to keep all the technologies on the table, because for the moment we don't know which technologies will gain the competitive edge over the others. And what is more important, we cannot put all our eggs in one basket, because we don't know whether there will be no obstacles on this way. So we need to go forward with different options, so that if some options will not play, we can move to the others. So that's what we will be doing in Poland, but I think that in the whole, not only Central Europe, but also whole Europe thinks in the same way. And of course, we need to keep this diversification of supplies. Poland many years ago started to build the LNG terminal, the oil import terminal, and the Baltic pipe, so that we could diversify our supplies of gas and oil. And that's thanks to this we were able to very quickly get rid of Russian gas and Russian oil, and we were therefore helping our Ukrainian friends also politically by promoting, inviting all the other countries in Europe to do the same. And of course the solidarity, which means interconnections both in oil and gas and electricity. We are currently opening our second LNG option, which will be the floating regasification storage unit in Gdańsk Bay. We hope that this will help not only us, but also other countries in the region. That's all for the introductory remarks. Thanks you.
Thank you very much, Jakub. Just to sum it up, you pointed to the sovereignty of each country in energy production. You spoke about the solidarity that has to be practiced in Europe, and that Poland is also practicing in the energy field. You have a huge challenge in reducing the dependence on coal. You had 400,000 miners. Now you only have 80,000 working in this field. That's a huge reduction. And the major share of renewable energy in Poland will be in the future in the sector of wind, not in hydro energy. But you also pointed to the lack of human resources and also financial resources, and unfortunately also technology in Europe as a whole. You spoke that Europe is only leader in the wind technology, but this will be the field of renewables where Poland will put a lot of emphasis on. Thank you for this, and we had now the experts of energy. We now move to a diplomat who definitely is also an expert on energy. But I'm very pleased to have next to me the ambassador of Slovenia, Aleksander Geržina. He is by education a historian, but joined the foreign ministry of Slovenia right after independence, and in 1992. And so you are a witness of the rise of your wonderful country. You worked in important positions when preparing both the entry of Slovenia to the European Union and to NATO, both in the year 2004. And then you worked also in different positions in the foreign ministry. But most important, you're already the second time ambassador in Austria. Ambassador Geržina seemingly likes this country. Otherwise, he wouldn't be here for the second time. We are very pleased to so to say, remark that you have the floor, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Sajdik. Dear Martin, thank you very much for hosting us. And I'm not an expert, as you said, and I will not give you numbers. But anyway, thanks also to the Czech colleagues, Jerzy, to your staff, to Matthias Marko from the Slovenian Embassy, to organizing this, to co-organize this event. I think it is timely and it is at the right time. Because we are still around the anniversary of the war on Ukraine, let me just say a few sentences to comment. I want to say this also at this stage and at this opportunity to commend the courage and, of course, resilience of our Ukrainian friends in defending their country, their territory, and, of course, the democratic values. On the issue itself, I'm a bit more optimistic. Maybe I can continue where Mr. Boltz stopped. He was a bit more optimistic. It is not actually so bad with energy in Europe. You know, we, the Europeans, have the habit. By the way, I like being the last speaker because the last speaker has the privilege that nobody listens and nobody's after him. So thank you for that. But you know, we the Europeans have the habit to constantly, you know, to quarrel ourselves, to question ourselves. Where are we? Which direction are we going? The end of the world is near. So we were in the last decade. I've listening to a number of panels and discussions. Europe at the end, financial crisis. Crimea, migrants, COVID pandemic. So we have a decade of more than a decade of huge crisis, but we are still here. I mean, we are still active. This is still the best. European Union is still the best what happened in the European history. To give you a bit of more broader insight, not to talk about numbers, but. And we had, in a matter of very short period of time, a number of decisions taken on the European level regarding the energy crisis. And, you know, if you look at the European history, the last 40, 30 years of the 20th century, we had already a number of energy crises. We had the oil crisis, late 60s, beginning of 70s. And the whole decade, till the beginning, till the Iranian Revolution, actually, we were faced with energy crisis. And at the end of this long, remember Yom Kippur War, nationalization of Suez Canal by Nasser, and so on. So boycott of OPEC countries because during the Yom Kippur War, because Nixon wanted to have $2.2 billion for Israel to spend on military powers and so on. So these gave additional incentives, especially to Europeans and North Americans, in looking for new energy sources. And at the end of this long period of time, natural gas emerged as one of the, at that time, relatively new energy sources. So let's see also at this crisis that we are in right now. In some countries it is more, in some countries it is less. Germany is doing quite well, Poland also. Austria is also struggling still quite a lot on Russian gas also at this very day. But let's take this war in Ukraine, as bad as it is, to rethink our position, to rethink where we are, to think about new energy sources and how we should organize, and finally, go away from the dependence on Russian energy supplies. And this is I think this is a good chance. Slovenia, I want to now say also a few sentences about Slovenia. Slovenia also was in a shock. We all knew what might happen in the day D, but when it happened, everybody probably here were in a kind of a shock or taken by surprise. But we're doing quite okay. We still have around 50% dependency on the energy importing energy from outside. But we have a kind of interesting energy mixture. We have 1/3 coal and gas, 1/3 renewables, and 1/3, of course, nuclear power plant, which is very popular in Austria. But I can do this a bit later. And we are now in Slovenia. When I listen to our politicians, they were forced to think the situation that Slovenia is in, and this also always gives positive energy and positive development. This was always the case in history. We have now plans also to work more on renewables. Here, I'm glad that we have our Austrian friends on board, because they are very, very good in renewable energy, and I commend them. They have around 75% of their total energy comes from renewable, which is remarkable. We are also planning, and these plans are already now very far, to build a second power plant in Krško in a few years from now. Here we, of course, are aware of our neighbors in Austria, as I mentioned. We fully understand their position. I still remember the day when referendum results of the Zwentendorf. I remember, I'm an old man, I'm just looking young, but I remember the evening, Bruno Karajski was in front of the cameras very disappointed, because the margin was very little between those who voted against and those who voted for the Zwentendorf. And we are, of course, aware of sensitivities Austria has in this regard. We are trying to address them more or less successfully. We have two conventions that we have to follow in planning our new second power plant. But yes, it is a sovereign decision of each country. I think that we have also the taxonomy, which was not mentioned today, in the EU, meaning that nuclear energy is seen as a kind of a green energy. Yes, my so to say final sentence would be: let's take this war in Ukraine, when it comes to the energy, as a new start for Europe, not only European Union, also broader. We have the Western Balkan countries, not to forget. We have some other countries who are still waiting to be members of the EU. To rethink where we are. We will have a new commission in a few months. Energy will be part of an important part of workload of the new commission. So yes, let's be positive. I don't want, also we have now, when you are talking to the young people, listening to and seeing to the media, everything is negative. More than over the decade, we are listening to negative information concerning Europe, and it is not. It is something very positive, and we have to be thankful every day watching what is going on in Ukraine and other parts of Europe and the world, that we are living in Europe, in wealth, and at peace. Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you, Ambassador. You're very right. I agree with you that we have to also see the positive side of the developments in Europe, and you are right that the war will be, to say, and has to be a catalyst. I know that you want to pose questions. I also have at least 1 or 2 questions. And so I would ask first, I would pose the questions to those countries that will now opt for nuclear energy. Let's go and discuss nuclear energy, if I may say so. Tomáš, Ehler, you are, and you spoke about in your remarks about the role, the future role of nuclear energy. You know, in Austria, there are concerns. The governor from Lower Austria, Mikl, just wrote a letter to your minister voicing her concerns, voicing the concerns of the population. There is a resolution of the local parliament of Lower Austria that was just adopted. Also on, Dukovany. As you read German so well, I will then give you the text. But I don't, I wasn't asked to pass you on the text, but just as a matter of reference. But what I would be interested in is the question that was raised by Mr. Schebesta. For those countries that go into nuclear energy, does not nuclear energy also is not nuclear energy related to dependencies? You spoke about the independence, but the dependence is where do you get the uranium from? And where does the uranium come from? Who are the partners for uranium? If I look at the strategy of Russia now in Africa, for instance, in Niger, but also in Mali, but especially in Niger, 20% of the uranium in France comes from Niger. And when you look at, and they don't call it now Wagner anymore, but these are now official Russian, military units that help the local regimes, and in exchange, Russia gets access to energy resources and or gold. And Niger is just another of these examples. So I think the question that Martin Schebesta put there is, from my point of view, a pertinent question. Is there not, again, a new dependence indirectly from Russia? And I would also, ask our Polish colleague, it's maybe a provocative question, but the former Polish government was on good terms, to put it mildly, with Hungary. And Hungary is developing its nuclear energy together with Rosatom, Paks. What were the discussions of the previous Polish government with Hungary exactly on this issue? And was there any discussion on this? And what does that mean for an energy dependence or independence of Europe in the future? So how will you safeguard through nuclear energy the independence and not the dependence on others, or even the dependence on the United States? We now see what that can mean to be dependent on the United States. So there is an aspect that we might discuss here. So please, if I may ask you, the three, speakers from countries of having nuclear energy or moving into nuclear energy in Poland, to maybe respond to this and react to it, please.
Yeah, thank you. Firstly, as for the mentioned 9 initiative, I would say perhaps we respect the Article 194 of the Treaty on Functioning of the EU, the national sovereignty. So we do not say any country which energy policy it should do from Czech perspective, but we may and we are able to name the impacts of each national energy policy and quantify the impacts, be it positive or negative. And I may say, from the Czech perspective, nuclear power plants help very significantly, be it in Bavaria or in Austria, to maintain the stability of demand and supply, and especially in Bavaria, to maintain the frequency to grids stable. On the other hand, and I will not go into detail, we may name the impacts of not being able to produce as much energy as I need, or if I close the significant sources of energy, which impacts it may have on the price, on the stability. First point. Second, the dependence and nuclear energy. It's complex issue, but I will say their diversification and the strategic reserves is a basic principle for nuclear energy as well, not only for gas and oil, be it for nuclear fuel or nuclear materials or raw materials. I may not comment from which countries is coming uranium for Czech, for the Czech operator. It's a business secret. On the other hand, there are more alternatives of non-Russian source of uranium enrichment conversion. So this is very high priority for the Czech government, also coping with that. I mentioned the special legislation on that. There is a world market. We have, and this process started already before the conflict in Ukraine. The Czechs went for diversification of nuclear fuel suppliers for Temelín and Dukovany, and especially what you said, we don't want to be dependent on one source, be it Russians or Americans. We want diversification. Therefore, they went for US and French technology both, so that they can choose. But perhaps there is a dependence. It's very time-demanding process to prepare, construct, and commission the nuclear power plants. So I think a challenge connected with dependence is to persuade, to get the EPC contractor, the technology vendor, to finish the power plant. There is a degree of dependence I see. Sometimes described as partnership, but it may be evolve into dependence on the technology vendor. And as for national safety or national security, also very high priority for us. And this is a bit different approach as in the Hungary. Our government decided not to allow Russian and Chinese technologies to the technology competitive tender, but also to deliver any critical parts or to be any dependence on Russian or Chinese technologies within the construction, and it's now stipulated in special law. So this is also very, very important aspect.
Thank you. Jakub?
Well, to a large extent, I would have to say the same as Tomáš just said. There are quite a number of established democracies that are supplying either the nuclear technologies or nuclear fuel, to name only the US, the French, the Koreans, or in case of small modular reactors, also Canadians or British counterparts. There is a big number of companies in Poland that want to jump on this train of energy transition, and they are cooperating with different actors around the world to implement the nuclear technologies in Poland. We chose the American Westinghouse technology as the provider for the first classical nuclear plant in Poland. We are in dialogue with all other providers in terms of possible second nuclear power plant. One of our private companies, energy companies, also made a contract with Koreans on building another one. So the train is slowly moving forward. We need to accelerate, but what is our advantage is the current level of public acceptance for nuclear technologies. In Poland, according to last polls, it's almost 90% of the public that accepts the nuclear energy, and more than 60% would welcome the construction of a power plant in their neighborhood. So we need to take this opportunity and start the transition now.
So do you want to say something?
In terms of Hungarian,
yeah.
Well, I don't know about the contacts between Polish Parliament and Hungary on this, but we would invite all other countries to follow the example of choosing the established democracies as the providers of their technologies, both in nuclear and in other terms as well.
Very diplomatic.
Thank you.
Great answer. Do you want to add something on this?
No,
Okay.
I just agree with
May I have one sentence?
Yeah.
What is, for the dependencies, what is important to have experienced operator, experienced project owner, and experienced national industry for supply of different services and components. And that's what the Czech Republic posts have traditionally. So this I would add to that.
Maybe just one sentence when we were already discussing about the suppliers and so on. Power plant in Krško was built in 1975. Am I correct, Matthias? 1975 it was opened by Tito and everything. And already at that time it was built by Westinghouse. We were the only Yugoslavia at that time counting the nuclear power plants in Eastern Bloc, so to say. Yugoslavia had at that time the only nuclear power plant built entirely out from the Western Westinghouse technology. So we will also now continue with the second block to we have several options. France was mentioned, United States, South Koreans, and so on. So established democracies, I would underline this. This is crucial at this stage.
So, thank you. Before giving the floor, we still have some time for some questions. Question to Mr. Boltz as the former regulator. Please, it is a very simple question that probably will give is for a difficult answer. Is nuclear energy really cheaper than other forms of energy? That is what I would ask you. And how does Germany manage, the triple departure from coal, nuclear energy, and also from Nord Stream? Please.
I mean, the cost question is actually, I think, the one point where nuclear doesn't have a good chance, because nuclear plants have the distinct disadvantage. You have about 90% of lifetime cost at the construction. So you make a bet on the long-term electricity prices. if you want to fund it commercially. If you are in a centralized state like, I don't know, Russia, China, where people don't care about this cost, you just build it and the government distributes the cost. But if you want to have it commercially financed, you have the difficulty that you need to build it, you need to spend 90% of lifetime costs, and then over the next 20, 30 years, you either make money if the electricity price stays high, or you lose money if electricity price goes down. So the commercially funded nuclear plants are few in Europe. I mean, we have in the UK with this, contracts for differences where the government basically guarantees a minimum price for electricity, irrespective of market, to fund it. So I think nuclear, and that has nothing to do with the Austrian position. I think nuclear, at least the current nuclear that we know, the big ones that we have around Europe, are not going to be very numerous. I think France will build a couple, some Eastern European countries are building new ones, but in general, it's commercially not a very viable technology because you make a bet on the long-term electricity prices, and of course, it's extremely difficult to predict electricity prices for 20 to 30 years. It's basically impossible to do. And when you think about a more renewable electricity world, we are going to have many, many hours where electricity will be worth zero because there will be too much wind, too much solar power, and we'll have a few hours where electricity will be very valuable and expensive because there will be no sun, no wind, but we still need electricity. And so the only scenario under which nuclear pays is if we do not find any reasonable, inexpensive electricity storage technologies, which might be the case. I don't think, because there are some options that would take too long to explain. And we are talking about like 30 years. Construction takes about 10 years, and that's if you are fast and lucky. When you look at Finland, it took like, 20 years almost. So today you start, I build nuclear. So in 2040, you have the plant, and then you need stable electricity prices from 2040 to 2065 at least to refinance this. And of course, that is as long as the interest rates are low. Now at the current interest rate level, it's even more challenging. So personally, I think that the share of nuclear in Europe, which is now 38% roughly, will probably go down to about 15%. Some countries will go for it. Some countries have orders, and they will expand existing plants, but the share of nuclear will shrink. And this has nothing to do with liking or not. I think it's a pretty reliable technology, so it's not a big problem, and Austria is kind of crazy about it. I mean, very few people have ever died from nuclear, and even in some of the accidents, leaving aside the Russian, Ukrainian accident, but in the US, I mean, we're talking like 1 or 2 people who died from 3 Mile Island. I mean, that's almost nothing compared to the thousands and 10,000s of people who've died from coal plants, in production coal, in transport, in the emissions of coal. I mean, I used to go to the Czech Republic after the opening of the Iron Curtain. I mean, there were whole areas of the land were totally devastated. And I'm sure the people who still live there, they died by the hundreds and thousands from this air pollution. So nuclear is a lot safer, but I think commercially it will not really prevail in, let's say, countries where you need mostly commercial investments. It's different in China. If somebody decides we built this, they built it. If it's more expensive, it doesn't matter. But in our countries where economies are somewhat relevant for these decisions, where you go for commercial financing, I think nuclear's role will shrink. It will not go down to zero because there are some advantages, but overall, I think the share of nuclear will go down, and it has almost nothing to do with technology. Now, the big open question, and I think our Polish colleague mentioned it, yes, there are some technologies, these kind of small modular reactors, which maybe will turn out to be a lot less expensive and a lot faster to construct. But this is, well, who knows, We might fly to the moon all tomorrow, but it's by far not certain that these new technologies will actually be a lot cheaper. They could be cheaper. They have a possibility to do for various reasons. So that's my view on nuclear. It has nothing to do with sort of the Austrian political position, which is, more a traditional historic background, but it's purely commercial and technological reasoning.
Thank you. Martin?
Yeah, thank you very much. Very interesting question indeed. Let me start with, because you mentioned coal, nuclear, and gas. So the easiest one to answer, I think, is the gas question. As I've said in my statement before, Germany managed to substitute Russian gas completely, and most of it is from Norway and the Netherlands. LNG will play an important part as well, but again, here diversification is key, I think. Coal and nuclear. Well, Germany, as you know, decided to phase out both coal and nuclear power. And obviously this is a difficult situation or a challenge. We've seen that last year in April, Germany shut down the last 3 remaining nuclear power stations, and then had to run up some of the coal power stations again. There has been a commission and a sort of national consensus to phase out coal as well. And of course, the challenge will be to substitute this energy source. Also, obviously, as I mentioned before, to find a energy carrier that gives like a basic level of capacity, because renewables, as we said before, tend to be weather dependent, and one key obviously will be to find a way to store renewable energy. So we're talking about storage sites and intelligent smart grids, etc., that are related to that. At the same time, we have to look at hydrogen, and I think it is promising, but we also have to work together on that. Regarding nuclear itself, I think you have similar debates here in Austria, but in Germany the issue came on the table again when it was about shutting these remaining 3 reactors. So to some extent public opinion even was against shutting down these nuclear reactors. This is a very different situation from the situation with Fukushima, so I think this shows that public opinion adapts, but we have to see, given the path taken, what is feasible. I think if you're looking at the climate targets we have to really think and look whether nuclear can sort of help us achieve that goal. Also, of course, energy security, but there will be a debate on that, I'm sure, or there is one at the moment. Me personally, I think we should avoid going back to sort of carbon sources. They're obviously an important part of the mix. We need to diversify, and they're an important bridge technology to climate neutrality. But in the medium to long term, we need to find alternative solutions and find a way or an energy mix that works. Again, I would like to state here that cooperation, in my opinion, especially in Central Europe, is important on that issue.
Thank you very much. Any questions, please? Bitte.
My name is Günter Fehlinger, and I'm an economist and pro-NATO activist. And my question I will ask now for Mr. Boltz. You know, the Central and Eastern European countries are able to manage the energy transition and to decouple from Russia, and also to support Ukraine effectively. Neutral Austria is not able to do it, and we still have this 7 billion euro contract every year. So what's your perspective to end this energy yoke under which Austria has self-imposed itself, especially given the fact that these are much poorer countries still, and we are so egocentric and not able to really feel European solidarity or solidarity with Ukraine? How can we really end this and have a more moral energy policy and end Russian imports?
Please, let's have some other questions. Any other question? Bitte, Krauchenberg.
Thank you very much indeed. I have a question on energy transition. The process in Europe generally, but Germany, Austria especially, for new projects is just too long. Could it be faster in a way? Is there anything in the legislation? And we had a very good example, Wilhelmshaven LNG plant that was built very fast. Hopefully the 40 kilometers to Germany for the gas will be also fast. However, the main problem is with the electricity grid. High tension lines taking 10 years or more to be built, this is impossible. Thank you.
Is this the question to all?
Concerning Austria and Germany.
Okay, all right. Any other question, please? Bitte.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question to more of the speakers. You mentioned, Mr. Schebesta, that the German coal and nuclear shutdown exit was a political decision, yeah? And with this, you relied on European Union and the internal energy markets, hoping if you shut down your own power plants, Europe will deliver what Europe did, yeah? On the other hand, we do have to respect the European Treaty 194, that each country has the possibility to build its own energy policy, which is true. But this creates a little bit don't you think this is a tension, that the tension between the European internal energy market, or is it still more a national issue? And I would be interested in which do the countries believe, which is the stronger driver for this, the national dimension to be your own constructor of the future energy policy, or you simply rely on the European Union's policy and the neighbors that something will come. And this has also an impact then on issues like solidarity and all the things. This is a very critical topic, I think. Thank you.
Betziner.
Yes, hello, my name is Heinz Betziner, and I would like to ask a question brought up by Mr. Boltz, but also to the rest. Resilience of energy supplies, something which has not been addressed by the speakers, and I would like to know who should pay for that? Should it be the state? Should it be the users? But we definitely need it. Thank you.
Interesting question. Yes, please. Over there in the back, this is then the first round, or is it then the end? I don't know. Please.
Hi. So in late March, there will be a first ever nuclear conference in Brussels, organized by the IAEA and I think Belgium. And so will the countries concerned up there attend this summit. So my second question is, because I'm a journalist from China, so just now the big nuclear boss from Czech, I think, already said clearly that so he said no to Chinese technology and Chinese construction in terms of nuclear. And I also heard from another gentleman, I think it's from Poland, who said that you are open to all technologies. When you see all technologies, does that also include China technology? And what's the views of other countries in terms of Chinese technologies, constructions, or possibilities of entry in the European market? Thank you.
Thank you. Would there be any other questions? If there are any other questions, we definitely will have a second round. But could you raise your hand now, or okay, how many more? How many more would there be?
There's one over there.
Okay, all right, 3 more. Okay, then let's do this first round. I just want to prevent that the wine gets warm. But it's just, all right.
Okay, I'll start. I mean, the Austrian gas supply is actually a simple question. While in 22 it would have been challenging, not impossible, but challenging to stop buying gas from Russia. Now it's not a problem at all. You know, we have a well-supplied market. There's enough gas there. What's currently lacking is really the political will. OMV says, well, we have the contract. It's kind of market priced. If we stop buying, we have some trouble. I mean, I don't think they're really afraid that they will have to pay X billions for the next 30 years. But still, it's a nuisance. They will probably go in arbitration. There will be some back and forth. So they prepare for the possible disruption at the end of the year, which, given that the transit contract expires and it's not clear how the delivery will happen, it's a realistic possibility. And there are several possibilities how to get rid of the contract. There is now in the green gas package, there's Article 70A, which allows member states to basically limit the capacity that is given to Russian gas on entry. The Ukrainians could just stop transiting, then it happens by itself. And there are probably at least another 2 or 3 possibilities. But the issue is, do we want? If the government says yes, it will not be a problem. We won't be freezing or anything. So that's the reality. So if we don't do anything, which is a very Austrian approach, then we have a 50-50 chance that something happens to the transit and there's just no more gas coming. There still will be gas to the Turkish stream, on the Balkans and up to Hungary, but there will not be any gas to Ukraine. And then we will be basically getting the gas from somewhere else. It will not be a huge problem, It will be some nervousness and maybe 2 months of higher prices, but that's it. So it's not a big thing. We are now in a very good situation in that relationship, and we will see what happens. Now, regarding the infrastructure, it's clear that if we want to reach our climate targets, we have to accelerate infrastructure building. That's basically all sorts of, mostly electricity infrastructure in the broadest sense. Now, will we be able to do it? I don't know. It's legally simple, but you need, again, the political will to change the law, to limit the duration of the various steps in the proceedings. Will it happen? I don't think, but that's really a personal view. I think it's more likely they will just miss the climate targets and will be, 10 years later or something, or maybe 15 years later. But we're going the right direction, and at the end of the day, a couple of years up or down probably don't make that much difference. So we should not put too much value to these things. We are going in the right direction. Last year the 22-23 was a little bit surprise for the grid operators because they never thought we would be as fast in building renewables, but because of the extremely high prices, everybody put PV on his roof, and suddenly, of course, the grid was congested, and it will take another 3 to 5 years to resolve that, and then things will normalize. High voltage grids, at the end of the day, because somebody said, okay, we have so expensive energy. Yes, we have expensive energy in Europe, which hasn't really hurt us that much, because if you have the choice of living in Berlin or in Vienna or Prague versus, Knoxville, Oklahoma, you're probably happy to pay a little bit more for energy in Vienna, Berlin, and Prague rather than in Knoxville and Oklahoma. Sorry, I hope there are not too many Americans here. So we survived with these higher energy prices. Of course, we could not survive with energy prices as high as we had 22. That would kill industry within a very short period of time. But now we have a moderate level. And something that we have totally ignored so far, actually we are located very close to places where there's that cheap renewable energy available. We have North Africa, not far away from here, and you can produce electricity there for less than 10 euros per megawatt hour. Transmitting it to, let's say, northern Italy, southern France, it's probably not much more expensive than 20 euros per megawatt hour. So we can have limitless electricity at 30 to 40 euros per megawatt hour in southern Europe from North Africa. And in the desert, it doesn't take too long to build a line. Very few people complain there about PV panels. So we have some potential that is so far untapped, and that I think eventually will be tapped because we will not be able to do all the renewables ourselves. And North Africa is just one example, and we have the North Sea wind power where we are building up here. So we have a lot of potential electricity generation around Europe. And if we are a little bit more relaxed about importing and building lines, we should have reasonably priced electricity. Still more expensive than, in Abu Dhabi, of course, but still at a reasonable price level. And when we look at today's prices, they are coming down to 45. Today, in Southern Europe, Spain, Italy, Portugal, you can buy 15 years electricity for 45 euros per megawatt hour. That's not too bad. You know, it's still a lot more than what you pay in Texas. But then in Texas, you know, when there's a storm, they turn off the electricity, whereas in Southern Europe, it's pretty stable. So we are not in such a bad position. Resilience, I think we have a relatively resilient energy system because we have diversity in supply. We had this gas problem that's kind of 60% solved or 70% solved. We have still some issues about resilience of some raw materials, some technologies where we probably need to do some work. Coal is not a problem. It's pretty widely available. Oil is not a problem. It's pretty widely available, even if some specific countries have an issue. But Europe as a whole gets oil and gas from many sources. And therefore, we do not need to have a big problem. I mean, look at the Suez Canal. There has been no gas going through the Suez Canal since the Houthis started to, you know, send rockets. Gas prices went up like a day or two, and then people said, what the hell, you know, the Arabs send their gas to Asia and we buy more from America. That's it. So no effect on prices. So we are pretty well diversified and resilient, so I wouldn't worry too much about it at the moment.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, regarding legislation and the speed up, especially of grids, you're right, this is a point, and I hope this will actually take up speed, because we're talking about basically changing the permitting processes, both on the European level. The Renewable Energy Directive 3 from last year includes one aspect, which is that the sort of permitting logic is reversed, right? So you have different time deadlines, and if a renewable energy project, certain regions are excluded, is not approved within a certain time frame, it automatically is meant to be permitted. And in Germany, we're talking about basically implementing this mechanism too. Hopefully this will speed up everything, because this is a huge problem, red tape and bureaucracy and the longer permitting processes. If you talk to grid operators, they will tell you if they want to build big transmission lines, they will pay a lot of money just for archaeological site exposure, basically whether there's any archaeological site that could be affected below the grid. You would also have to remove certain animal populations that are protected, and that also takes a lot of money, which then is put on the energy price for everybody. So this is a good point, and I think this is one of the keys for a good energy transition, permitting processes and speeding up the grid, etc. Regarding reliance on Europe, looking at Germany, I didn't see that Germany said that we would basically phase out certain energy carriers and then rely just solely on other European countries for the rest. In my perception, it's more about debates which sort of energy carriers we want, which ones we don't. Of course, you're right that you should always think how to replace that and remain realistic about it. And I think at least one viable option, but as you said, that has to be sped up, is renewable energy sources, and obviously the storage issue. That's going to be important. Yes, and I think if I may add up to your point, I think you're right. Diversification is key, and we need to look beyond Europe as well, because I think realistically, even though we have a more integrated energy market in Europe, we won't be there won't be autarky, right? We will need energy imports, but it is key to diversify and learn our lessons from the whole situation with Russia and the development that took regarding our energy security. Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Would you react, please, to the...
Perhaps I think the permitting process is very important, not only for great renewables, but let's stay technology neutral. It's very important also for nuclear. So therefore we did it, some novelization of legislation, the French, the Polish friends. But I think we should strike a right balance, especially in the nuclear safety, because the example of Wilhelmshaven, to switch off public procurement legislation, environmental legislation, I cannot imagine that in Austria it would be welcomed if we do it for nuclear new build 30 kilometers across the border. So it has to be balanced but effective. A bit, if I may, I think it's important to look on global markets to allow some degree of dependence of import with diversification, but from the Central Eastern European perspective, I think the independence and not dependence on especially non-democratic countries, it's for us not acceptable. Therefore, another reasoning for nuclear, if we discuss, and we can hear the discussions to be dependent on hydrogen deliveries from Near East or in other countries, or you remember the project Desertec. I think the economics failed already 2007, 2008. So I think we should be more cautious, and the economics could be reasonable because returning back to discussion on whether nuclear new build could be cost effective or not, or could make sense economically. We see, unfortunately, nothing is today built in the EU without no significant low carbon energy source is being built without subsidy or any kind of support. In nuclear, it's especially about cost of money. So I think this is the way. It's a clear recommendation of OECD, UNECE, and other. So I think it could be economically, and therefore, let's stop here, so that we don't slide into another discussion.
Would you like to?
Well, from whole discussion we had today, it seems that the key word for energy security is diversification. It's either diversification of technologies or directions of supplies of energy resources or raw materials, and also of ready devices or technologies to produce energy. Therefore, Europe is very experienced in keeping a large portfolio of friendships with all other parts of the world, and on this basis we can also build, not to becoming too dependent on one country, whether on import of gas or any other energy resource or technology. I think that there are some directions on which Europe is currently too dependent, and it would be good to find solutions also for this. But we are going in the good direction. The issue is whether we can get all the goals we want to achieve at the same time with the resources we have.
Thank you. Please, more questions, please.
Thank you. My name is Adam Teufel, and I have a quick challenge or a question about the term technology neutrality or energy energy openness, which was mentioned in different contexts, but by nearly all speakers, which struck me. I personally, I'm German, so this is also a very loaded term in the German debate, but for me it represents a bit of a tepid argument or a comfortable position to not commit to future and to decide what the way forward is going to be, because it's a bit techno-optimist. We're going to have a better technology coming along, so we don't need to act now. And we talked about large infrastructure projects. Eventually, you have to decide where the road is going to get built. And I think I shivered a bit when I heard that it doesn't matter when we reach our climate goals, because I think it actually matters very much now. In the next 5 years, the decisions we make now will really shape how the world will look like in 2045, and whether it's a livable world or not so livable world. So isn't energy openness or energy neutrality not a continuity of naivety, and should we be more decisive? Thank you.
Please.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a highly interesting panel. Thank you for that. I heard many interesting things, and I have 3 questions actually, so I spread it very quickly. For efficiency reasons, we have heard many interesting things, but why is politics like WKÖ still wants combustion engines when we need to lower down the amount of energy, and not going for electric cars, which are light and easy for that's a big CO2 emitter in Austria. Second of all, why do we stick with hydrogen, which also has extremely low energy efficiency, and it's the worst energy to volume density available on the market? And why don't we open the market of grid stabilization to other technology other than synchronous engines? So we have batteries. The nuclear power is far too slow for the future demands. Thank you very much.
Any other question? Yes, please.
Thank you. Dear Ambassador Saidik, good evening. Thank you very much for this wonderful panel. I'll be brief. My question to will be open to all distinguished invitees. Regarding the Arctic Council, I would like to hear some more comments, if it's possible, from 8 members. As we know, 5 are members of the EU, but only a combined fleet of Sweden with Finland, it's only 7, whereas Russia has 37. And as we know, tomorrow's geopolitics and supply chains will be as well shaped by the Arctic Sea. So any few comments by the distinguished experts. Thank you very much.
Could you repeat that question? Because on Arctic Council, what do you mean? Could you, so that we can really
from answer? 8 countries, 5 are parts of the EU. Sweden and Finland has only 7 icebreakers, whereas Russia has 37. So is there any kind of strategic defense policy in the minds of the EU experts for the future?
Okay, I don't know whether anybody will be able to answer this interesting question, but okay. Any other question? No? Then please, who would be willing to start?
Technology neutrality. Yes, concrete 1-2 examples. The first thing, you have some pot of money which can be distributed, be it EU money or national money, which needs some steady notification. Technology neutrality means that each state may decide in which energy sources to focus or to use this money, to use your comparative advantage. And I return back to my example. If you want to build nuclear in Central Europe or photovoltaic in Spain, etc. Today, technology neutrality is a nice principle, a bit like subsidiarity, but if you take all these support schemes or funds from last period, just transition for Repower EU, etc., or you take the AIB funding, nuclear is excluded. So let's translate it into concrete language. Technology neutrality from the Nuclear Alliance and our countries means let us decide where to focus the money. Of course, we have to admit the state is not a good investor, but state makes the environment and the private investors make the decision despite the regulation of energy sector. So this is the technology neutrality in praxis. And this comes back to the comment by Mr. Preinshofer. In this aspect, the Article 194 is challenged because there is not free choice, not free choice to focus the funds, etc. And I think at the end, if you are technology neutral, you reach this cost effectiveness, you can you reach the higher welfare for the community with spillovers for neighbors, etc., for the internal market.
Thank you very much. Interesting question about the naivety and openness to technology. I think there's a difference between picking winners and letting technologies win in the market competition process. I think if you keep an openness, that doesn't necessarily mean that every technology will still be in use. That can well mean that if there's one technology that works really well, that is cheap and fulfills everything that's needed, in the future it can be the main technology. It doesn't mean basically openness leads to no basic technology or development, the opposite. Competition leads to innovation and development. And I think it might be, it's dangerous if you, from a state point of view, pick a winning technology where you don't know what's coming in the market or which technology comes up. It can change very fast, actually. So I think it is important to keep an openness to technology, but that does not mean that you don't have a technology that actually sort of wins the competition, so to speak. Yeah, regarding hydrogen, as I said in my beginning statement, it is promising. There is no market yet. We have to see whether it will become a business case and at least try out this as a way to store energy, especially for energy-intensive procedures. Also, derivatives there play a role. So we don't know whether it's going to be hydrogen itself or whether it's going to be a derivative like ammoniac or methanol. This remains a process that we need to keep watching. Just to answer these two questions.
Anyone who can answer the question on the Arctic situation? Sorry.
I can't really answer your question, but in general, we don't have any icebreakers. in the Czech Republic, we have some scientific projects up there, and we applied for the observer status in the Arctic Council already before the war started, and Russians blocked our membership. So, but that's all I can say about it. But I think icebreakers, they are more about supply chains, no, rather than about energy. I think it's a different topic, but of course related with economic security in general.
I mean, it is related insofar the Arctic situation because there are large amounts of gas as far as we read, and this might be connected to the security, overall security questions coming to icebreakers in Russia and so on.
Yes, please. You.
I just have one more question. Related to the icebreakers.
As long as we have already broken the ice, so please go ahead.
The question is why European countries did so little with their dependency on Russian oil and gas in times before the war. When it was clear that in times of crisis Russia will use their energy as leverage, that they will use it as a weapon. And as we all know maybe that, for example, the Gerasimov doctrine that we all know since 2013. And, yeah.
Okay, please. Anybody?
This is a question for our politicians, I guess. But I mean, you just had an example of Mr. Boltz, who was commenting on the Austrian situation. So I would guess this is highly connected to the questions to our political elites in each of the member countries or other countries. Now, you know, in German they're saying, im Nachhinein kann man nicht klug sein. So in retrospective, it is very difficult to be, you know, clever enough. After the battle, all the generals are clever. So it was the situation as it was. Russia is a huge potential in terms of energy, and I would not dare to comment why we didn't see it coming in this sense. It is a real policy, and we are here in the cradle of the real politics, coming to Metternich and so on. So this is kind of, you know, this was 270. It is around Metternich, a bit before, but this is as I'm seeing it.
Does it mean that nobody saw the war coming?
Well, maybe nobody was able to see when it will happen or if it will happen at all. But I think that the blunt and not naive answer to your question is because this gas was cheap. That was the cheapest option of providing ourselves with energy. And as long as this gas wasn't funding the invasion of Russia in Ukraine, the politicians had other more pressing issues in their decision-making process than whether this gas comes from Russia or from other directions. It was the cheapest option. But to credit our politicians as well, when the war started, and we knew that this gas will finance the Russian invasion, we gradually and stepwise resigned, get rid of this gas, and as well as oil, as well as coal, as well as all other energy carriers coming from this direction. It's really taking into account, we had some questions about permitting. We had some statements about the length of investment process. It's difficult to switch from one day to another to other directions of supply, in particular when you have to replace the supply with pipelines by supplying with LNG terminals that are not existent. So the economy cannot stop. We have to have energy. That's why this is so difficult to do the transition, to keep the climate targets and to keep the economy running, because you have to outbalance the competitiveness of the economy, the satisfaction of the demand, of the basic demand of the people, and the long-term goal of climate neutrality. And you have limited resources and limited ability to take the decision. But let's not be naive. We know how the situation has changed. The true question is probably whether if the war ends, to which extent we will keep the current situation of the supply from other directions, or will there any kind of appetite for coming back to the supply from Russia? But it's not up to us, I guess, to answer this question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this great answer. I think we do come to an end of our discussion today. Unless somebody from the panelists wants still to say something. Okay. The topic today was energy in security in brackets, in Central Europe. The situation of energy security in Central Europe after 2 years of war, of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. I think the answer, if I can sum it up in not too many words, is if I listen to all our panelists, one can say, well, actually, we have done so badly. There is more energy security, if I take, so to say, draw the conclusions of what we have heard here, then energy insecurity. And that we have been able to get our countries through difficult, turbulent waters, but how to say fare in the future and how to go in the future, and the lessons that we can draw if we stop being naive are obvious. Whether the lessons will be drawn totally is something else, and this will also depend on how long this war will still continue. This is for sure. A German cabaretist, very famous one, Mittermeier, spoke about the typical motto of the Austrians, that is, es geht sich aus. Everything, will work out. Es geht sich aus. That's what he said about Austrians. The Austrians think always in terms of es geht sich aus. And to some extent, if I draw the lesson of what I've heard here today, es geht sich aus. It will work out. Maybe it's too much of being Austrian, but I think es geht sich aus also for the reason that our governments plus the European Union have drawn the right conclusions, have taken the right measures, and this, if I may say so, ahead of the European elections that we have this spring, is actually a positive aspect. Thank you very much, and I invite you on behalf of the Embassy of Czechia and of Slovenia to the wine and some finger food next door. Thank you very much. And I have to say thank you also to all the wonderful panelists. Thank you very much.
May I add that the live streaming was because of the Embassy of Poland?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.